You open the beta reader feedback file. It's an immediate gut punch. You try to stay open. You want to grow. You try to have thick skin. But this is where that feedback can destroy your book dreams. Either you throw it all out and miss the exact things readers needed from you, or you revise for everyone and lose the soul of your story. Here's the truth: beta reader feedback doesn't mean what you think it does, not at face value. In this video, I'll help you decipher those vague, frustrating comments and turn them into useful story insight so you can polish your reader experience and create loyal fans. So let's start with the real reason most beta feedback doesn't mean what it says, becoming not only unhelpful, but dangerous for the good of your story. It's not because your readers didn't try. It's because they don't know how to say what's actually wrong, because they don't know what caused the feeling they had while reading. And that's where you, the author, need to step in as the translator. Let's break down a few of the most common beta reader comments and what they really mean for your story. It was boring. Ugh, the worst, right? Most writers assume this means the plot is too slow or the pacing is broken, but that's usually not the case. More often, this kind of feedback means your reader didn't feel emotionally invested. Here are the most common reasons why that might be. Your beta readers may not have understood your character's goal or why the character cares so much about achieving it. The deeper motivations and internal tension between what the character wants and what they fear may not have been clear. Or the obstacles didn't feel tailored to the tension. Maybe everything seemed too easily resolved. You might also see signs of this in places like infodumps or world building that lacks scaffolding. That often happens when readers don't know how the character cares about those details, so the information doesn't feel grounded in emotion or story relevance. Another possibility: too many plot events are acting on the protagonist instead of being driven by their choices. Without agency, your character becomes reactive and readers disengage. Maybe your beta readers didn't know what was at stake, or maybe they didn't care enough about the outcome to stay hooked because they didn't understand how your character cares. So when someone says your story is boring, it's almost always an immersion issue, not an action problem. The pacing was off. You hear this, and your first instinct is to cut scenes or rewrite whole chapters. I mean, sure, it doesn't hurt to do a structural assessment. Are any beat percentages too far off? If they are, maybe, just maybe, your beta reader was right. But what I find more likely to be the case is that what readers mean by pacing has very little to do with speed and a lot more to do with emotional rhythm. Readers get fatigued when you keep hitting the same mood over and over. Maybe you had too many low energy scenes in a row. Maybe every scene hit the same emotional note. Maybe your character just kept reacting instead of making active, meaningful choices. Or maybe your protagonist kept failing again and again, without any small wins to give the reader a feeling of progress in the plot. This too might give you the same result in feedback. These aren't structural problems, they're balance problems. So check balance of fails and victories, high moments and low moments. Do they roller coaster enough? Or do sections feel unbalanced or flat emotionally? But if that all checks out, it still might not be your pacing. It might actually be a character connection problem. Did you provide enough meaning for the events in your story? Do your readers know why your character cares about these events? Or did you gloss over the surface too much or fill your pages with more external action and not enough of that internal stuff? Or the other way around, too much introspection and not enough forward momentum? Beta readers can't often articulate those things, so they catch it all with the almost but not quite popular feedback phrase: the pacing felt off. I didn't connect with the character, or I didn't like the character. Let's get one thing out of the way first. Your character does not need to be likable to be relatable. Your character doesn't even need to be relatable in the usual sense either, meaning just like your readers. If that were true, stories from the points of view of assassins and serial killers would never succeed. At least, I hope they wouldn't. Rather, in storycraft, relatability really means readers can understand your character, even if they don't agree with them. It means we know where they're coming from based on their history, circumstances, and internal motivations. We don't have to like their choices, but we get why they make them. That's how we relate to them. That's what allows readers to mentally step into a character's perspective. It makes their worldview make sense for them. And once that clicks, we're invested, we're intrigued, we care. So when beta readers say they didn't like or connect with your character, what they really mean is they don't understand your character well enough to care. Here are some of the most common reasons that happens. They didn't see on the page how your point of view character cares about everything. They weren't sure why the character was making certain choices, or those choices didn't feel consistent. They didn't get enough backstory, context, or inner motivation to make the character's thoughts, feelings, and decisions feel grounded in something. Or they might feel that the character is flat or too stereotypical, which can be off putting and means there's not enough specificity and layered development on the page. This doesn't always mean your character isn't deep enough or developed enough, but it does mean that you haven't presented that depth clearly enough on the page for them to connect. It dragged, or too much going on. And sometimes, yes, feedback like this feels completely contradictory. One reader says it was slow, another says it was overwhelming. But here's the plot twist: both might be reacting to the same core issue: lack of clarity or focus. Too many subplots, too much exposition, or a sequence of events that doesn't clearly build from one moment to the next. Now, yes, you should absolutely double check that you're hitting major turning points at expected beats, and check your word count for your genre and category just to rule out basics. But often, the reasons for this feedback go deeper. Not all your scenes may be necessary, or they don't create a meaningful change from beginning to end. They might also break the logic chain between scenes, which I explain more in my scene revision video. You might be describing things your point of view character doesn't actually care about, and if they don't care, your reader won't either. You may have too much internal processing or too much action without a clear balance between the two. They depend on each other for a story that feels emotionally tight and narratively clear. Some of your characters might be disposable. If they're not serving the story, readers can sense that, and it feels cluttered and harder to keep track of. Or your subplots may not all feed into the main theme and message of your story for added depth and nuance. If they ultimately give off filler episode vibes, that's a whole lot of info your reader didn't need to know or file away to remember, because it simply wasn't important later. Cue the overwhelm and frustration coming out of beta comments in the vague terms so reflective of those feelings. So never revise based on beta reader feedback at face value, but don't throw out their feedback either. Interpret from them what really needs your attention. And if you'd like a neatly packaged reference for decoding these and other common types of phrases from your beta readers, or want to be ready for when you do receive beta feedback, you can get my reader feedback cheat sheet. It's included inside my Critique Partner program, where you'll also find training, processes, and tools to help you get the feedback you need and apply it to your story. I'll link it in the description below. So now that you've started to decode what beta readers might actually be telling you, we need to talk about how to approach feedback in the first place in a way that sets you up for success. Because here's the mistake I see all the time: writers get the feedback, fume in anger and defensive justification, and if they haven't dismissed the feedback entirely, immediately attack the comments in quick revisions like a checklist to get through. That's how feedback goes from helpful to harmful. You need to pause. Let that gut punch moment settle. Don't respond. Don't rewrite. Just wait. At least a day, preferably longer. I say this to my clients all the time. Waiting to respond to feedback has been the right choice in every instance. Even when the feedback wasn't emotional or harsh, my perspective has always been clearer once I gave it space. Your gears will start turning, seeing potential and exciting possibility out of all the new connections the feedback helped you make. Because when you're not reacting defensively or overcorrecting out of panic, you can actually ask better questions. What was the reader really trying to say? Is this pointing to something deeper I hadn't considered? Does this align with what I know I want to do with my story? That's what sets up effective interpretation. Not just knowing what to fix, but knowing what you're trying to achieve with each revision choice. Beta reader feedback is only useful when it's filtered through a clear vision of your story's purpose, arcs of change, and emotional core. So once you've let the feedback sit and you've started thinking clearly about what it might be pointing toward, how do you know what to actually do about it? Neil Gaiman said it something like this. Remember, when people tell you something's wrong or doesn't work for them, they are almost always right. When they tell you exactly what they think is wrong and how to fix it, they are almost always wrong. That quote sums up so well what beta feedback is really for. Feedback is a flag, not a fix. It's a signal something isn't landing the way you intended, but it's not your job to implement solutions your beta readers suggest. They shouldn't even be suggesting solutions since they're readers, not editors. It's your job to figure out why they said it in the first place and whether that lines up with your vision for your story. That means look for patterns, not isolated comments. Watch for multiple readers saying similar things, even in different ways. Pay attention to where their confusion or boredom overlaps. Sometimes a note feels random until you realize 3 other people hinted at the same thing, just in different words. That's not a coincidence. That's a red flag. But just as important, know when not to act. If a piece of feedback goes against your story's emotional arc, character truth, or central message, it might not belong in your version of this book. You are still your book's authority author. You don't have to explain it to your beta readers in the moment, and actually don't respond to your betas to do anything more than thank them or maybe ask for clarification if absolutely needed on something, but that's it. But you do need to understand your own North Star. What's the reader experience you're trying to create? What emotional journey are you guiding them through? What truth or transformation is at the heart of your story? If a feedback note helps clarify that, explore it. If it pulls you away from it, set it aside. So, yes, beta reader feedback can feel like a gut punch, but it's a treasure hoard of insight into your reader's experience to put to use. If you can turn those decoded, curated pieces of feedback into a revision for your strongest story yet, I'll show you how to put it all into a clear, structured revision plan, one that tells you what to fix, in what order, and why to get your draft to a marketable book. It's in the video on your screen now. See you there.